Esperanza.
Hello, Irwin.
Greetings. Greetings.
Hello.
Greetings. Now, as we've mentioned so many times, Esperanza, we're brutally honest with our audience. So even though this podcast is being recorded towards the end of 2024, it will be airing in 2025.
Full transparency with it's just the way we roll.
Yeah, exactly. Well, like the Zillow of podcasts, full transparency, it's yeah, you don't want to tell me how much you paid for your house? I could find out in 5 seconds. Anyway, um, uh, oh, anyway,
Oh my
oh
gosh.
gosh, goodness gracious.
Well, I have to say that our topic for today gives me sort of a hankering for a certain beverage.
It does, and it's it is a you know it, well, why don't we just get right into it? The topic for today, I guess, did as Esperanza's bringing out really started as a beverage, but took on a later life, and we're talking about Bonac Tonic. Now, well, why don't we go to really the background first, Esperanza, of the beverage, which was now you actually drank
I still
Bonac.
do.
You still do. Wow,
So I
she is
still
so
get this.
authentic. My gosh, you
Um,
are authentic.
well, but and so we're going to talk about the Loose Arts Collective that christened itself after this marvelous beverage. But yeah, Bonac Tonic was that little green carton with the yellow windmill that you would get at the deli with your sandwich at Buckets,
Right, right,
or wherever you got your sandwich back in the day.
right.
And it was back then. I mean, I can't remember how far back. I'm assuming it was still because I remember Schwenk's Dairy was being produced by them. But today I think it's made by Hampton Dairy and they're out of Texas or something
Yeah,
like that.
yeah, 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 probably owned under the umbrella of
and
whoever,
and
but
lots of
yeah,
corn syrup and
yeah,
deliciousness in it.
exactly. Some there's an iced tea I like that's out of a bottle, and it's funny. I like just the other day I was like reading the label, and it's like like the sugar was 140% of your daily requirement. Like I mean, it was. And I said, there is a reason it tastes so good. And
Yes.
I guess that's why.
Well,
So
let's say when we have Bonac Tonic in the house, my children have been known to have it in the evening, and that is no longer
the-
allowed
and then they're
because they
bounce
do
and
not go to sleep
they are bouncing off the walls.
between the
I
caffeine
remember
and the sugar. Yeah.
I remember those days well. And when you reach a certain age, like unfortunately I am, things like coffee and iced tea after 12
Oh,
o'clock is a
after
no-no.
yeah,
Yeah.
after three,
Yeah,
yeah, forget it.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, right. You could be my younger sister. So for you, it's after 3, but for me, it's
exactly.
probably after 12. But
I'll get
but
there.
unfortunately, you'll get there, but unfortunately, you'll never catch up. Anyway,
Oh
so Bionic Tonic, but they were, and I'm going on record, Esperanza. I was an enormous
yeah,
fan
I
of Bionic
remember.
Tonic. I mean, I loved, and we'll get into who they were, but I loved their energy and their exuberance, and
It
they
was
were really.
playful and fun,
I,
and
I was
yeah,
an enormous fan.
breath of fresh air.
I actually, and I bought a lot of
You
artwork from
did.
Bionic Tonic. Now,
I know. I'm jealous because
and
back in that time,
now that's right. I
I
mean,
still
now
had a gallery,
that's
Irwin.
right. Esperanza. Now, to give everybody, it's almost fitting that we're in 2025 talking about this. But again, that's where Esperanza and I first met when Esperanza owned a gallery. Really, gosh, Esperanza, can I say literally at the turn of the 21st century? I mean, like, so
Seriously,
we're
yes.
going back,
It's a
20
wonder.
plus years. And that's where we first met, where the conversations started there. And 23, 24 years later, we're still having them, albeit a little different and on a different platform. But Bonac Tonic and was an artist collective. And I guess, you know, we should give the cast of characters and Esperanza, suffice to say, we were talking about this before we went on the air, right? How there was a core group we perceived to be the core group
Right.
of Bonac Tonic, but apparently there were a lot of people came and went and like participated with, in the many types of shows and things that they did. But I guess for me, the core of this group was really Bran Haffner, Scott Gibbons, Carly Haffner, Grant's twin sister, Justin Smith. Like those four to me were really, um,
The core, yeah, like
I-
the founder
yeah, yeah. And again, we don't know if they
group,
were the
founding group.
quote found, but those I
The
perceive
organizers.
the
Yeah,
organizers.
maybe Matt Brophy. I don't, yeah.
Right, right, right. I have a Matt Brophy piece, blah on wood. I
See, there
remember
you
it to
go.
this day. Okay, and so, but yeah, for me, it was particularly, I think, Grant and Scott, like those two, Grant Haffner, Scott Gibbons, they were really my perception. But again, and I'm going to give you just going to name some of these people, and I remember them: Christine Liederbach, Molly Weiss,
Hmm.
Gary Lovelace, Don Porcella, Elizabeth Karsh, Maeve d'Arcy. I mean, I own some of these works from these people, mind you. I mean, to
Yeah,
this day, I mean,
yeah,
Christian Little, Oliver Peterson, Darlene Charnako was apparently did an exhibit here or there. I mean, and with this, Eric Segura, Rossa Cole, Scott Bluedorn, who I know is a listener, fan of the show. So, but again, the core, really for me, it was Grant and Scott, and
hmm
then maybe, Carly and Justin. And now, Esperanza, these guys, and I should give you Grant actually um, gave a definition. So I'm going to read this and then we can sort of go from here. This is a Grant Haffner quote from 2017. How Bonac Tonic is a collective of painters, sculptors, photographers, and other artists based in the Hamptons who curate local group shows with an emphasis on new and emerging artists. Bonac Tonic, formed in 2005 to reinvigorate the art scene. Okay.
yeah. I think that. Okay, so the podcast is over. You're saying, yeah,
Yes,
yeah, we're done.
basically. Okay, well, yeah. To all of you continuing to be interested, we suggest you go to Google and find it. No, just kidding, of course.
No, but
Um,
I was going to say that I think, to me, my sense of this is that this group sort of was predominantly, and I'm not saying exclusively, predominantly, it felt very Springs based. Oshawa Hall was like their hub.
yes.
And really they did shows that raised money for Oshawa to help the Springs Improvement Society in their stewardship of the
Mm-hmm.
building and so forth. So do you agree? I mean, it was really
Thousand
a very
percent.
much Springs
It
based,
definitely, and
and that makes sense because so many artists do to this day and historically
right,
live in Springs. So it
right,
kind of is the continuation of a history.
and it even plays into what Grant's quote was: how to reinvigorate the art scene. Again, not just yeah,
Yeah, I
and
take no offense to that, Grant. I
no, no.
really
I mean,
don't. I mean, I was doing nothing, and no, I'm
yeah, no,
I
you
thought
know,
I had
yeah,
reinvigorated the
yeah,
arts. No,
you were the art scene in East Hampton at the turn of the
no,
21st
no,
century
no.
for me. I will tell you that unequivocally, but
But you were cheating on
yeah,
me.
I was cheating. You were the Signa Gallery of its day. I mean, in the early 21st century, Esperanza, you really
Oh
were. That
gosh.
was my. But anyway, we've
Thank you,
touched on
thank you.
you
But
were. I was.
no, they had very, they not only did shows at Oshawa, they did pop-ups in Montauk, closer to my home, my current home, Wainscott,
That's
at
right.
the Wainscott Chapel,
Mm-hmm.
the building stewarded by the Wainscott Sewing Society, Hampton Photo
Right.
Arts, and
It,
then I think the most recent, which was what 2017 or so, was at the now former Catherine Markel Gallery in
right.
Bridgehampton.
Where I do remember, those winters where they were, they did have the space. They had some
Right.
arrangement
Yeah,
with Catherine with the
she
gallery.
would
Yeah.
close her exhibitions
Right.
program and allow local artists to take over. Yeah,
Yeah,
which was great.
which was great. And I mean, I again, I mean, Esperanza, I don't want to sound like a Bonac groupie, especially
But you
considering, but I
but
basically
you
were.
were.
I really was. And I mean, like I look back, I mean, gosh, can I say I guess biologically I was old enough to be their father, but I sort of felt like they're, maybe I like the older brother thing a little bit better,
That's fine. We'll
yeah,
go with
but
that.
we'll go with that. But like I I just love their energy. And we're going to give an example of their energy, in a minute, because we're going to actually go down the road of when they did an exhibit. Really good article from 27 East in 2008. So this was when Bonac Tonic was really
Yeah, 3 years
old.
in, thriving. Yeah.
Three,
Hmm.
three, 3 years old, 3 years in. So, now again, it's 20 years later. And we'll save this for the end. I mean, look, these again, 20, they're not really in play anymore, but I guess so what we're really talking about is I can use this word, their legacy.
I
They're
was
really,
just going to say you took the words right out of the
right?
word right out of my mouth. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah,
But they,
it
they
is.
really did leave, they really did leave a legacy. So I think we should really touch on this going back to 2008. So remember now, giving the timeline, this is 3 years of Bonac Tonic at this point. And again, these guys, men, women, I'm going to say they were really predominantly in their, whatever, mid 20s, late 20s. I mean, I don't think they were 30. Maybe a couple of them were over 30, but I mean, they were pretty young when they were doing all of this. And at Ashawar Hall, quietly on a Friday night, as midnight approached, a handful of people from Bonac Tonic and their supporters closed up Ashwag. They were tired but satisfied that the place was going to get ready for the action that would ensue the next day. Okay, so put yourself here. They were there Friday. I guess the opening and whatnot is going to be the Saturday. That's when they normally did it. And
And just
again,
for those listeners who are not familiar with Oshawa Hall,
okay,
it's, it was a school. It's a community center at this point, and it is used on weekends, particularly. Usually it's rented out to individuals, organizations, groups for as an exhibition space, right? Among
exactly.
in addition to other uses, but it is for that. And then you get it for that, Friday, Saturday, Sunday.
That
And
is
if you're
that is
lucky, you go and you can clean up on Monday,
exactly correct.
right?
That
Okay.
is
Okay.
totally my perception. And it was, and you would rent the space. I mean, and by the way, it wasn't inexpensive. I mean, like there
No,
was a
yeah.
cost associated with this, that they had to incur. But again, note the timing. This is now November. It's off season. It's a little quieter. So what Bonatonic did here, and again, we're just, this is one example, but this is just a microcosm of their body of work, essentially, Esperanza, just to give our audience an idea of what their whole modus operandi was. It was BYOA2, an acronym for Bring Your Own Art Again, or, that's what it
This was
was.
the second edition,
Yeah,
maybe.
they're the second edition, apparently they did it first. And the plan was simple: accept a piece of art from anyone who showed up with
Yeah.
even yours truly, who can barely write his name
Did
legibly.
you show? Yeah.
I didn't show at Bonac Tonic. I guess I didn't want to tarnish their name in their infancy. Although I did show at, Guildhall
Guildhall.
membership
Yeah,
years.
you
We've
didn't mind
touched on that
tarnishing
in
that
we've touched on that in prior,
institution.
and I have the photographic proof of you and I standing in front of my photograph. You'll never live that one down. But anyway, you would show up with a piece. You would hang it on the wall, and of course, here's the real Bonac Tonic thing, and then have a party with food and live music because it was always about the party with Bonac Tonic, and it was sponsored by them. Now, it was a $10 artist entry fee. Okay.
Defraying the costs. That makes sense. Yeah.
And again, now this is to your point, Esperanza, these people, young people, they were great citizens. They
Yeah.
donated half of that fee to the Springs Improvement Society. They didn't have to do that. Okay. I mean, this venue was costing them money, and these people, at least my perception, they weren't rolling in it. I mean, like
No,
this,
yeah, no.
they
Yeah.
were, this was meaningful, but
Hmm.
they did it. And the other half would go to a 50-50 raffle. So, I mean, they weren't subsidizing the cost of this. They were donating it. In other words, the participants, the guests, the artists, and the Springs Improvement Society were benefiting from it. Honestly, altruistic spirit,
Right.
right?
Yeah, definitely.
Really. I mean, so they would set up, they would paint the temporary walls. I mean, they went to pick up donated pumpkins from Pumpkin Town and Watermill. By the way, cause of all traffic, Pumpkin Town.
Oh, Crazy Town.
Yeah, yeah. I
Yeah,
mean,
it's not Pumpkin Town.
it
It's
isn't.
Crazy Town.
It's Crazy Town, and sorry, I digress, but
But I think,
oh,
in fact, it's such a crazy town that they actually, did not get the pumpkins because there was too much traffic.
that's
to that
exactly
point.
which fits right into the Bonac Tonic whole. That's the whole. Oh man, too much. This too troublesome. And they spoke about that how they went there and the traffic and the late start. The pumpkin run was so long that
They
they
gave
were
up on
line
the
of artists.
idea.
They had to give up on the idea. And Esperanza, having been caught in the fall, I remember when we used to go back. I know we're digressing, but we do that on our Hamptons. I remember when before we were living here there full time, and we would go back and forth on a Sunday night.
Mm.
So help me, we literally had to time it with when we knew Pumpkin Town was closed, because if
Closed.
we went when it was open, and this was off season, mind you. Remember, this
Right,
wasn't a
right.
summer
No, yeah.
weekend. This was a Sunday. I mean, people, not just the traffic, people with wagons going across 27 with pumpkins in it. It was unbelievable. And the traffic backed up to Wainscott from Pumpkin Town, honest to goodness. So anyway, but I digress. So the line of artists already this Saturday morning was already 6, 7 deep by 9:30. The trio at the table: Molly Weiss, Justin Smith, Grant Haffner, according to 2070, sort of found their groove, which was a good thing because over 6 hours, 110 artists
Yeah,
would
it's a
stop
pretty
by.
phenomenal, like that's a heavy lift to do a show like that. And mind you, as I said, for 2 days. I mean, really one day, because if they opened Saturday night, then it's really Saturday night and Sunday.
You're
It's
already
a
breaking it
day and a
down
half.
Sunday. Yeah,
Yeah,
you were
yeah.
breaking it down Sunday. And remember, there was no, um, yeah, I was going to say there was, later on, there became a farmer's market, which gave them a kick, but I don't think the farmer's market was there in '08. But anyway, um, so they came in, I mean, 110 artists, and Esperanza, that's a good term to use, a heavy lift. I mean, these were a few people curating, coordinating,
All hands on deck. I mean,
all,
mothers, parents were in this, siblings, everybody, friends, right?
yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
Justin and Molly were passing out forms, explaining the procedures. The donations were going into a jar. You know, Grant would walk the artwork from the porch. His two-person team, his mother, Nell Haffner, John Whalen of East Hampton. I think you know John. They hung the art. Scott Gibbons was in the kitchen getting it ready. Homemade soups and desserts were made. I mean, look, and I know, look,
I
I'm
know all
preaching to the
about this.
choir. You've done all this.
Yeah.
And trust me, I had many a mojito and, amongst other things that,
I had my
Esperanza
mother
Williams
making
Gallery.
meatballs.
And trust me, Esperanza's mother was the best caterer in the Hamptons. She should have had a shingle house.
Mojitos and
Well,
meatballs.
yeah,
That's what
mojitos and meatballs. You know, she was the real barefoot Contessa. I'm voting for Blanca for barefoot Contessa. Okay, she was the barefoot Contessa, and she would serve him with a smile.
Yes, so
She would
true.
serve him with a smile. I think she had
Maybe
a
one
sip.
day we do an episode on
We
Solar.
we have to do an episode on Solar, really. And I often wondered if she was serving with a smile because she had a sip of her very strong mojito. It's
Oh,
possible.
no, but maybe some straight up rum. Yes.
Esperanza, that is a good idea. We really should do an episode on Solar. That's gonna go in the memory bank. That we really have to do that. Consider it done. Anyway, so Grant, he was hanging the works, signing in people. Artists were coming in, they were spread out on the front lawn. Asherog has a big front lawn, big outdoor space, you know, because remember, they weren't just installing inside the gallery. They were putting outdoor sculptures outside the
Yeah, whole
building.
installation. Yeah,
Big
yeah. No,
installations.
big
I mean,
production.
power tools, tire rims, found objects. I mean, and they were illuminating these things. They were placing lighting. I mean, getting the pumpkins signing people in, creating their own artwork. I mean, they were all that. Is it any wonder I was a groupie?
Yeah, no, I could see the energy was it was contagious. It
It
was
was contagious. It also might have been me saying, wow, I was young once too, but
yeah.
but so anyway, all day long, these artists continued to bring pieces, and it's saying, but predominantly, again, this was local Springs, East Hampton, Sag Harbor, Southampton, but, you know, Hannah Scott left her East Hampton home at 11 to drive. She went to a library in Queens where her artwork was exhibited to bring it back to Ashwag. I mean, talk about dedication.
Right.
But,
Yeah.
I mean, Joyce Raimondo was bringing a friend who came from Long Beach, Long Island to be part of it. I mean, and she really didn't register. Apparently, according to this, Molly and Justin pulled out an application and she got the last spot. But then they closed the doors and they had to move some of the artwork so there would be a flow. They had to set up the beer, the wine, Cassandra, who I think ultimately became Grant's wife, if I'm not mistaken, started serving soup in the kitchen. That was sort of her skill set. I think she was a chef, making homemade desserts. There were Halloween decorations. Again, this was early November. So at 5 o'clock, Esperanza. Look at Esperanza smiling, thinking, waxing nostalgic about her own openings. I'm beginning to think over there.
Oh, I don't miss it.
That's also true. Um, so at 5 o'clock, the doors reopened and the opening reception went underway. And I mean, look, there is, even though you don't miss it, there is a certain energy and
Oh yeah, no.
adrenaline. I mean, huge
I have very
adrenaline.
good memories. I'm
Yes,
just
right.
glad I'm not
And,
doing it now.
and there is like in any kind, because essentially, Esperanza, this is a performance. These people are performing, and
Yes. Yeah.
there is an adrenaline, a rush, and it's like when you're being on, you have to be on.
Right.
Sort of like you and I when we record a podcast and we come
Yes.
on,
People, we're on right now. We are
yeah,
on.
exactly.
Yeah.
Sometimes you feel a little low energy, but hey, man, we're on. And to their credit, Esperanza never is low energy, by the way. I think
Oh.
so. So at 5 o'clock, the doors open, the reception gets underway, the band's set up. Ashawa has a side patio. There were covers, original music. And I do remember this about these Bonac Tonic. People would dance at these Bonac Tonic,
Yeah,
right?
it's wonderful.
Dancing. And they would draw. They had large sheets of paper where people would just draw on these notebooks. And some of the artwork sold, not all of it, but some of it. People connected, looked at art, and wow, they talked about their lives, the economy, the national. It was an election. It was an election year, November of '08. They talked about the election and the state of the art market. Um, wow. Again, Jack Leonard Larson, or what name another, just things that inspire this kind of conversation. Bonac Tonic in their own way.
Right. Right. Yeah.
Esperanza Leone,
Really
it's
bringing community together, right?
Esperanza Leone, it's solar, inspiring community and conversation. I mean, that's part of what this was about,
Yeah. Gathering.
gathering. And so I remember this was a long day. So 10:20, they're starting to clean up, picking up. Remember, this day started last night till midnight. Then they got up early. All right, granted, these were 20 somethings. They could do this. But the day started early in the morning and they're still going at it. They talk about the next day. You return. Sundays are as always a lull. They get there, they set up whatever, but the doors open at 12, and then a few hours the artists have to pick up their work. Outdoor installations have to be dismantled. And at 5 o'clock it ended. But now again, going back, Esperanza, there were 27 more artists than they had the year before. Apparently, remember this was Bring Your Own Art too.
Right. The second edition. Yep.
Raised $1,200 for Ashawak through the Springs Improvement Society. And as Grant said, it gave people a reason to gather on a chilly November night. And Grant goes on here, Esperanza. These were the aims of the show, giving back, giving artists a chance to show their work. Someone wins a 50-50. Pat Hope, who we both know, was retired high school teacher, won it, and she donated it back to Ashwag Hall, which was what a beautiful gesture that was, Pat
Right.
Hope.
Yeah. $550.
That's right. And
Yeah.
again, but the whole, what a nice, you know, storyline. And now that was going to be the last show. And they go on to say, we touched on this earlier, how these events, although mostly associated with Ashwag, they did take them on the road. But, Esperanza, before we start wrapping up, we should go back to a little piece of East End folklore, which does sort of play into a lot of elements here, right? And in the not too distant past, there was an overhang on 114 near Cove Hollow Road, which, dare I call it graffiti, but I guess it was graffiti, right, Esperanza? I mean,
Oh yeah, definitely
it's
graffiti.
definitely
Yeah,
graffiti.
on the
Uh,
you're talking about the railroad overpass, the
that's right.
trellis.
That's
Mhm.
right. And that overpass said, Virgil is still the frog boy.
That's the more recent version of the graffiti.
That's right. That's
The
right. And
previous one, what was
was.
that, like 40 years ago, was Virgil is a frog boy.
That's right.
Is the
Yes, I'm
frog
so
boy.
glad you said that. That's right. Because that's so, you know, we always talk before we
And it
start a
got,
podcast,
yeah, it
and we
got
didn't really,
cleaned up.
we didn't really touch on that, but that's so true
Yeah.
because it was whatever Virgil is the frog boy, I think was the exact something like that. But the modified version was Virgil is still the frog boy.
Yeah,
And
modified because it had been wiped, or painted over
as graffiti often is,
as,
and
yes. And I guess somebody missed it.
right, right, right,
And
and
put
now
Virgil is still the frog boy.
right, and the only reason we tie it into Bonac Tonic, a couple of reasons. I mean, I remember I don't know if it was a theme of one of their shows, maybe it was actually
Yeah,
the
no, it
title.
was. It was, yes. And
Okay,
it was much more recent. I mean, recent at this point, it's almost 10 years ago.
right,
At Catherine Markel Gallery in Bridgehampton, where they took over that space. They did that exhibition in 2013.
okay.
And then I think they did another one in 2017. Is that right?
I believe so, but
No, 2013
it,
was the Virgil one.
oh,
Yeah.
okay,
Yeah.
2013. Oh, okay, my apologies. 2013 was the only one, but the point was, so I remember it was either like maybe it was one of it was like the publicity poster for the show,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and it
Yeah.
was Virgil is still the frog boy. And again, I'm telling you, I was a customer of Bonac Tonic. I mean, I love these guys, and I don't know if they had a bunch of them lying around, but I said, "Can I have a Virgil is still the frog boy?" And they gave it to me, and I framed that thing. And to this day, Esperanza, that still hangs in my house.
I love it.
The Virgil is still the frog boy, but we should also mention, because there are a couple of other tie-ins here. Um, it was part of a Lanford Wilson play. Am I correct, Esperanza? That whole
Yes.
okay,
Yes. Apparently it premiered at Bay Street Theater in 1996.
okay.
Um,
So
and the full title of that, though, it was A Sense of Place. Virgil is still the frog boy,
right,
which
right,
I
right.
love because
Yeah.
I think that ties in so perfectly into all that we're talking about and that we do talk about on this podcast, which is predominantly about sense of place.
1000%. And
Even though the Lamford Wilson plays title, like, it's like a gibberish title in the scheme of things because it had nothing to do with
no,
the subject matter of
not really. It
the
was about,
drama.
I mean, look, I mean, talk about this, a term you don't even hear anymore, but it was really about a bunch of aspiring, and I quote, yuppies that were summering out here. And
Here,
yeah,
exactly.
okay. But I mean, if we forget about that, you got to love the title. And again, the folklore associated with it, the edited Virgil is the frog boy to Virgil is still the frog boy. But to tie it all together, God, how's this for a segue? To tie it all together, we started this talking about Bonac Tonic, the beverage, right?
Correct. Yes.
And that was originally made, right, Esperanza, at
Mhm.
Schwenk's Dairy.
Yes.
Okay. And Schwenk's Dairy original location, or a location back in the day, was adjacent to that overpass
Yeah,
where,
as I recall it, that
yeah,
was, today it's what Riverhead Building Supply, but
right. But
yeah,
back then it was
back then
Schwenk.
still
I have a Schwenk,
Schwanks.
I have a Schwenk milk crate in my house too. You know
So
that.
do
I
I.
mean,
I think I
a
do.
yellow one, a yellow one. But so that sort of brings it all together. But
Yeah, kind of
and yes,
fun.
that was a lot of fun. And again, and we talk about this on our Hamptons, how we tend to romanticize the past. People generally do, but you know, Esperanza, I mean, honestly, Bonac Tonic deserves their rightful place in East End folklore to me.
I would go beyond folklore as and give it a few more years maybe, but it's definitely in the history of art, in the art history of this place. I think you still see many of these artists exhibiting
You
now in
do,
museums often.
right?
Some have gone on to have, more recognition, not just locally, but
Right.
more broadly. And so a loose art collective, much like as we've talked about, you mentioned Signa Gallery, but not going to compare Bonac Tonic to the abstract expressionists,
Right. Of course not.
but really, if you think about it, it was very similar because they start, the Fisherman's Fair. I mean, Bonac Tonic was very involved with that. They were all a part of that. They
Th-
had these excuses to gather
Yeah.
and do
Yeah.
exhibitions.
And they it was a moment in time, and it was really, speaking from a personal vantage point for me, I mean, a great moment. I mean, I thought there was a lot. I thought there was a lot to this group, and I think they were also, they made a lot of good art. We shouldn't even minimize that. A lot of them were really, they
They
made
were
people.
very creative
They
and
were very
very, yeah,
creative,
yeah.
but again, if you would play word association with me, Esperanza, and you said to me Bonac Tonic, I think the one thing I would continue to go back to is just energy,
Yeah.
good energy,
Yeah. Yeah.
good community energy.
True. Very true.
Wow, Esperanza, that was really, and I knew it would be because it's a subject near and dear to my heart, but that was really fun. And thanks for taking that journey with me. And as always, a pleasure.
Yes, it is. Thank you. And now I will have a nap, but not before I have had my glass of Bonac Tonic.
Very good. Which, since it's in all candor 2 o'clock in the afternoon, a little too late for
Too
me.
late for you. Until next time, Irwin.
Thanks, Esperanza.
Bye.
It's about history. It's about preservation. It's about sense of place here on Eastern Long Island. With Esperanza Leon, I'm Irwin Levy, and this is Our Hamptons. Thanks so much for joining us. New episodes of Our Hamptons are released every other Tuesday. Find them wherever you get your podcasts.